Hello everyone, welcome to episode 1 of DeLorean Day. Not going to do too much actual work today, but I'm going to show you around my DeLorean. As you can see, my DeLorean is sitting here behind me. We are in my garage or my basement, however you want to look at it. They are one and the same. So let's say give you a brief introduction of my DeLorean and what I've done to it thus far and what I plan on doing it in the future. And I'm going to do what I can to document, post, and upload to YouTube of the processes thus far. So join me on this journey. Okay, so we're going to start here at the back of the car, and then we're going to work our way around through the car, zipping in and out of the interior on a couple of the sides. Okay, so for those of you that have seen a DeLorean engine in the past, you'll notice that this one seems a bit odd. This is a PRV 90-degree V6 using the same block as the stock DeLorean engine, which was a 2.8 liter PRV. What makes this particular engine slightly special, and many people have done this particular conversion, this is a 3.0 liter PRV V6 out of a 1991 Eagle Premier. So it's got a little bit larger heads that they flow a little bit better. This one's even fire versus the original stock engine, which was an odd fire. This one has electronic fuel injection as opposed to mechanical fuel injection as the original stock PRV did. One of the nice things about this particular engine, and even the original stock engine that was in the DeLorean, the original stock engine that was in the DeLorean, the 2.8 liter PRV V6, is a Volvo design based engine. So it's very easy to find parts for it. You can simply go down to the Volvo dealership or your local auto parts store, whichever your favorite is, especially if you already have the cross-reference numbers in hand. Most auto parts stores do not have the DeLorean in their computer systems. So it is best to do some research ahead of time so you know what cross-reference numbers you're going to need. Now, this particular engine, one of the flukes that I noticed about it is Dodge in the late 80s, early 90s. Dodge bought AMC, American Motors Corporation, because they wanted the Jeep brand. Well, the Eagle Premier, which was the car that this engine came out of, became, I'm not sure, I'd have to look it up, either the Dodge Intrepid or the Dodge Neon. I don't remember off the top of my head which it became. I think it's the Intrepid. But when Dodge converted the car into their car, they put their V6 engine in it. So one of the issues I've storming right now. One of the issues I've had with finding parts for my 3-liter PRV engine is a lot of the auto parts stores, when you buy parts for this, half of the parts will be for the Dodge version and half the parts will be for the Volvo based version. I even bought a rebuild kit, one complete sealed kit. About 20% of the gaskets and seals in that kit were for the Dodge engine, and the rest were for the Volvo based engine. So needless to say, I got to know the people at the O'Reilly's local to where I lived at the time. I got to know them very well because I spent a lot of time in there going through books and cross-references and part numbers. I got to know them very well. The reason for this engine, the reason for the engine in this car, is the stock 2.8 liter when I first bought this car I went to start it one day and the starter engaged, clunk, and nothing. So I pulled the heads off that stock engine and it was pretty much a solid hunk of rust. So in determining my options for an engine replacement and doing research, I decided on the 3-liter because, one, it doesn't require any permanent modifications to the car. This mod can easily be reversed and taken back to the stock engine if I ever happen to decide to sell this, so it will retain its value. Generally, with DeLoreans, any modification that alters the frame, the body, things that cannot easily be reversed, it destroys the value of the car. So that's one of the main reasons why I wanted this, because I was going to have to replace it, so I was like, let's do a slight upgrade. Let's upgrade it, and what are my options? To me, this was my best option, in my opinion. No permanent modifications to the car. Drop in, bolt in replacement. Done. Everything else is with the electrical system for the engine, for the electronic fuel injection, the engine management, that sort of thing. For the wiring of this engine, there were some sensors and things. Let me move this clutch line out of the way. Turn on the light. Okay, so this is the stock bulkhead for the DeLorean. And if you notice, some of these plugs are empty. Well, basically what I did was I tied into the wiring that I needed for my gauges. And then went into the stock wiring. So my gauges are all stock. All this wiring is stock. I didn't remove any of these stock connectors because that goes back to, if somebody ever wants to take this back to stock, they can. They'll pull this engine out, they'll drop a 2.8 in, plug the original wiring harness. The original wiring harness will just plug right into these connectors, and it should run perfectly. Okay, now, those of you that know DeLoreans extremely well, you may notice something. I had a clutch line sitting there, and this is the wiring harness for an automatic transmission. Which brings me to the second major modification of this car. Once I got this engine together and running, I could start it, it'd fire up. I wish I could let you hear it. I do have a video posted of the very first time this engine ever started in this car. Look for it on my YouTube channel. So back to the transmission. I got this running. I got it all back together. I was excited. It was going to be the first time this car ever moved under its own power. Checked all the fluids. Everything was good. Checked the air in the tires. Started it up. Put it in reverse. Didn't move. Hit the gas, the engine revved up. Didn't even try to move. Okay, put it in drive. Tried that. First, second. Nothing. This car was not moving. So, I jacked it up a couple of days later, kind of discouraged, jacked it up, pulled the pan off the transmission. Everything looked fine. Okay. I really didn't want to particularly remove the valve body of the transmission because that's something that once you remove it, it's a nightmare to get all the torque and the gaskets and the seals and everything to seal properly. But I knew that there was a major issue with the transmission. So I pulled the valve body off of the bottom of the transmission that sits in the fluid pan. And inside the valve body, I found rust, corrosion. Several of the valve springs were rusted in 3 or 4 pieces. A lot of the channels were completely clogged up with crud. Transmission would need a total rebuild. So a total rebuild for the automatic transmission was going to run me between $1,000 and $2,000. a brand new transmission was going to run me between $2,000 and $3,000. So I just kind of put the project on the back burner and went on. I was on my way back from DCS, DeLorean Car Show, Ohio, when I saw this post pop up online. This gentleman had inherited a garage full of DeLoreans. Multiple DeLoreans, parts. I mean, I think he had 6 or 7 DeLoreans. I'd have to go back through my email and some of the forum posts to know for sure. So, anyway, so somebody acquired all of that stock. I was trying to acquire all of it, but I couldn't get everything done quickly enough. So, I bought a parts car, I think for $6,000. It had been wrecked and it had been rear-ended, so the back end of the car was crumpled. And I don't have that vehicle here with me just yet. I don't have it here in my garage. That's a future project to get that transported here so I can finish parting some of it out and utilizing what the rest of it I had. So I pulled the transmission out of this and I had me a transmission. So now here's the funny part. That parts car that I purchased was a 5-speed manual transmission. This was the 3-speed automatic. So that's where I'm currently at in this project, is doing the conversion from an automatic to a manual transmission. That's something that I wanted to do for a while, and it's possible. The biggest issue with doing that particular swap is you need parts that you really can't buy to do the swap. But me purchasing an entire other car allowed me to have all of the parts I needed to convert this car to a manual transmission. I know I completely got sidetracked there, but I promised you a walkthrough of the electronics. Over here we have our stock electrical system. Now I do have the door lock module removed. I have that stored somewhere. I'm going to do some modifications to it. So this is the stock wiring harness that comes in. This is the stock fuse box. And this is where all the stock electrical wiring for this vehicle comes into. Everything goes here. Now, I do have a couple of wires running that way. Now I have this out and open for doing testing and programming, but this box, this is a Mega Squirt open source engine controller. So this actually bolts to the bottom of this. So this is a wiring harness that plugs into the controller and it goes into here. So here I've got alternate fuse panels, a main electrical relay, and a new relay for the fuel pump. So this can control the fuel pump, which I've replaced with one of slightly higher pressure to handle for the electronic fuel injection. So this goes all into these connectors that go through the bulkhead right there and come out right here. So all of this wiring is for the new electrical system that controls the EFI of this particular engine. It controls the electronic fuel injectors. It controls ignition timing through a pickup in here in the distributor. It has its own temperature sensors and air pressure sensors, throttle sensors. This is something that I'm still working on, so it looks a little funny. So that's the electrical system. So now I've given you a small rundown of the replacement engine, a small rundown as to why I'm replacing the transmission. Now, let's dive into what it takes to do a transmission swap on one of these vehicles. I've already replaced the pedal box. Now the pedal box, on an automatic, you've got one wide brake pedal and a gas pedal. On the manual transmission, you've got a clutch pedal, a brake pedal, and a gas pedal. Now, this part is different between the two vehicles. The shifter is different, which you see the shifter's missing right now. And the shift linkages that run from here to the rear of the car, that's all different. The pedal box and the shift linkages are the two major things that are very difficult to find when trying to do this particular swap. Now, in order to swap the pedal box, you've got to basically completely gut the interior. The dashboard's gone, the gauge cluster, the binnacle's gone, the steering wheel, the steering column, all of that's been removed. The console, the dash, all of the dash, all across there has been removed. You don't necessarily have to remove all of the stuff on that end to get the pedal box replaced. You do have to remove the main dash pad to get to the bolts for the pedal box. Now, here's another major modification that I'm doing to this car. This car is an 82 model, grooved, no gas flap hood, automatic, gray interior. My parts car was an earlier build, black interior, 5-speed manual transmission with a grooved gas flap hood. I'm changing everything from here to the front off of the wrecked car onto this car. My parts car is an early model black interior with 5-speed. This is a mid-model gray interior automatic. The reason I'm changing everything over between the two cars is I bought this car, it was painted. So I told myself I'm going to strip the paint off the driver's side fender. And if that panel is good, then I'll strip the rest of the car. Don't care what I find. Well, that fender, the hood, and the T-panel were the only body panels that didn't have any damage. So here, let me show you the driver's door. This right here is the damage that I found on the driver's door. This was all filled in with Bondo. I'm assuming that this was dented in very badly, and whoever it was, cut it to peel it out. It's also possible that somebody hit it with a hatchet or something. Both quarter panels, I have those. I haven't finished stripping them, but the driver's side also has a slit in it, like the door. So the driver's side rear quarter panel has the same slit. So most of the body parts I'm getting swapped out. I know they're a little dusty, but these are the two doors off of my parts car. They still have all the interior pieces on them. I still have a few gray interior pieces left, but essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to be removing both of these doors and so forth. So this is my gas flap hood that I pulled off of my parts car. My grooved, these accent grooves here. My other hood has the grooves, but it doesn't have the gas flap. This is actually where you put the gas in for the car. Since the engine's in the rear, the gas tank's up in the front. Alright, let's talk a little bit about what it's going to take to do this conversion. I've already swapped out the pedal box. I have all the brackets for the rear transmission. The biggest modification that must be done is where the shifter goes. Right here. Now, of course, obviously I'm sitting in the passenger side because I've got the drive axles over there. The automatic shifter box goes in the frame further and the plate it bolts to is further down. Right here is where the automatic shifter box bolted to the frame. You have this single slit because the automatic shifter just selected like this. Now on a 5-speed, this plate is about right here. It's about an inch up higher, and instead of a rectangular cutout, it's a large circular cutout. And also on a manual transmission, there's a hole right here in the back of this plate, right here, for the second shift cable. The automatic has one shift linkage that goes back to the transmission. The manual has two. So here is the shifter, the manual shifter. This bolts in to that hole like this. Now, on a 5-speed, you've got first, second, and you go back. You have a back and forth and an up and down, and then of course a reverse. But anyway, so on the manual, you've got a forward and back aspect and a left and right aspect. So this part goes down in the hole in the frame, and a hard linkage connects here and it runs back to the transmission. Now on the top here, you've got this part here that connects to a cable that goes in that upper hole that I was just referring to. So when you go left and right, this pulls that left and right, pulls that cable forward and back, and then forward and back moves the lower linkage forward and back. So these two movements together shift the transmission into the appropriate gear. So that is essentially the story of my DeLorean. It, when I purchased it, was essentially an 82 model, gray, automatic. Gray interior, automatic, grooved hood, no gas flap. Because of my parts car, I'm essentially converting this car into an 81 5-speed. This car is getting the black interior out of the parts car. It's getting the manual transmission out of my parts car. It's already got the gas flap hood. I've already moved that over. So my very next step for this car is going to be working on modifying the frame for this shifter. I want to get the frame modded to accommodate this, and I think what I'm going to try to do is just kind of make some standoffs to hold this plate at the appropriate height and slot that rectangle out to accommodate for wherever this is going to land. And this will essentially be my shifter. Something interesting to note about the parts car that I purchased. When I was pulling the transmission out of it, that car had just had a service done to it before it was wrecked, and from the looks of it, it looked as if it had been serviced by one of the DeLorean specialized facilities, because some of the parts still had DeLorean part number stickers stuck to them, which I'm assuming is from DMC Houston. The pressure plate that came off that was installed, it had the marks where it had been machined, and the flywheel where it had been turned and machined and resurfaced. It still had its machine marks in it. The clutch had not worn those parts enough to wear those parts down. So I got really lucky, I believe, in that transmission. So once I get once I get that transmission in this car and get this car back together, this should be a drivable car. I'd like to finish getting the doors and the interior swapped out. This one's pretty much gutted, except for the seats. The seats from my parts car, they do need reupholstered. The front of these seats are in decent shape, but these are cloth seats. These have been reupholstered in a fabric, and I feel like they did a good job picking the color, because it matches. Like, it doesn't seem wildly out of place, other than the fact that it's cloth and all the DeLoreans had leather seats. So that's where I'm at on this car, this rebuild, restoration, what have you. If you have any questions, comments, please send me a message, drop me a line, say something down in the description. Check out some of my other videos. I don't have very many on the DeLorean yet. I'm going to try to start doing this as a weekly thing. Every week, do something with this car. I'm going to document that and put it up on YouTube. Mostly for other people with DeLoreans. The thing about DeLorean owners, and even though I've owned this DeLorean for probably 15 years, 14 or 15 years, and it's never driven under its own power. It's never moved under its own power. It's always been transported via trailer or hauling or strap, what have you. But anytime any owner has a problem, most of the time all we got to do is call up another DeLorean owner and we'll be happy to help. This has been a major project. I've taken apart and put back together more things on this car than I can count. It's definitely been an experience, and I'm excited to see what becomes of it. So, and actually, what I might work on today, I don't have time to try to modify this, so I've got all new upholstery for this. So yeah, there's the tour of the DeLorean, everything I've done thus far. This engine that's in here, I did completely rebuild it. It is freshly built. Well, I say freshly built. When did I do that? I haven't consecutively worked on this car as much as I'd like to have, especially now that I have this really nice garage here at my new-ish home. I've lived here over a year, and most 3 months of last summer I was overseas, which I've got some other videos I'm going to be posting on that as well. I've just worked on it in spurts. I haven't done it nearly like I should have or wanted to. But it's time. It's time to get this thing going, and I know this can be a beautiful car, and it's destined to be a beautiful car. I have the parts, I have the skill, and the facility to make it a beautiful, reliable, great running car, and I can't wait, and I'm glad to be able to take some of you along this journey with me since I've started doing these videos. So that's that. If I left anything out of the video, I'll try to make another video to answer those questions up and see where we are on that. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share. That helps out a lot. Also, too, if you feel like helping me financially on this project or for my gaming, for some of my gaming videos or anything like that, because I do need some new gaming equipment. I do have a Patreon below, or a so feel free to check that out if you feel like it. If not, that's cool. Hope everyone has a great day.